For this screencast, we're going to be going over the directions for the first presentation for the gay rights section. So there are a couple of presentations that you will be responsible for, possibly for this unit, and they range from the first 1800 presentations. We also have the music and video presentation, and you might possibly also have this second presentation. So we're going to start off the unit with this particular section here, and we see the rubric and the topics. So the topics are here, and for the most part, students will be teamed up and given a topic. So this is a reading, this is a reading, this one's a reading. Two students will complete the reading and then prepare a presentation using the rubric and the expectation guidelines that are distributed in class. The one thing I want to point out is if you are assigned one of the link case readings, this could potentially be broken down into a group of 6 to 8. So if it's 6 to 8 students, then 2 students will do the summary. The defendant will be another 2, and the co-defendant would be another 2, and the mom's testimony. In this case, you also might be assigned the co-defendant and the mom's testimony. So if you're given the link case, what you want to try to do is role play the case. So we'll have these 6 to 8 students do their presentation, and they'll present to the entire class, and the class needs to come away with an understanding of what this case was about. Everybody else is going to do a presentation on one of these readings. So when you go into the gay rights section, we see buggery law, and here are the readings. For buggery law, you have a series of readings, but you only need to focus on the yellow highlighted area. And for this presentation, you definitely want to make use of laws. This is one of the exceptions to the no text rule for presentations. Because you're dealing with laws, you need to highlight laws that were designed to target homosexuals historically. You could also take a look at the laws here. And notice that there are also resources provided. So if you have the Mulholland and Link case, there's a screencast that addresses that particular reading here. So here we move on to the next series of readings. Here we have the summary, the outcome, mom's testimony, co-defendant, and the defendant. So depending on which group's assigned, these might be broken up. There'll be 2 students looking at the defendant, 2 students are looking at the co-defendant, and then 2 students will complete these 2 readings. I do suggest that every student completes the summary so we get an idea of what this case is about. And then what you want to do is you're going to have the first 2 presenters go up, and they're going to do the summary. And then we'll hear from maybe the defendant. And then after that, we'll hear the co-defendant. And then after, we'll hear the mom's testimony. If done correctly, and we really don't need the 6 to work together trying to figure out a way to intertwine all of these topics, you can easily just kind of present one after the other. Because if you present in an order where we hear the summary, the defendant, co-defendant, and the mom testimony, we should have an understanding of what the case is about. At the end, we then will go back to this team, which has the summary as well as the outcome, and then we will come to some understanding of how this case concludes. Everybody else is going to have this series of these readings, so these are in order using the directions. So what do we have here? Sodomy and heresy. We see this reading. If you're given this reading, you definitely want to use the data that is here. The data, especially this section right here, must be addressed. So you want to probably define these terms, because if you're violating the sodomy laws, then this becomes your punishment, and that's going to be key for your presentation. Ulrich third sex. So Karl Ulrich is a 1800 sex theorist, and he's trying to argue that there are 3 sexes: the male, the female, and his third sex. In this reading, they use a series of terms, and these terms are the terms that were used by Karl Ulrich. After done presenting, the class should have an understanding of Ulrich's theory, and when you look at these terms, you probably will notice some similarities to particular uh, people today. For example, they might explain bisexuality. It's just that he's not going to use bisexual. He's going to use certain other terms. Even though bisexual is used in this section here, this is the author. The author of this piece here, this Hubert individual, is using that term. This Manling term, this Webling term, these are Ulrich's labels. Next up, we have the myth of lesbian impunity. And then all of the readings are just simply here in order. What I would say here with the myth of lesbian impunity, students want to have an understanding at the end of that myth. Have lesbian women been targeted? Do we normally think of lesbian women as victims and targets? And if so, is that a myth? So the author here is trying to dispute that myth and argue that lesbian women definitely were targeted historically. The next reading, Lawbreakers and Loonies, as well as this one here. And these two are more recent. They're not necessarily 1800s or earlier. These two readings are going to use text that you probably will find in all of these readings, but give you an example of what's happening and how these laws are impacting gay men and women in the 1900s. So we have all of the historical, and now we have some more recent cases using those two that are there that were just addressed. Next one, degeneration theory. So the degeneration theory is this reading here, and degeneration is looking at whether or not homosexuality is going to lead to an end to civilization. If man and man are together, they cannot reproduce. That is going to lead to the end of society. And that's that particular reading. Let's see. Conceptions of homosexuality and sodomy in Western history. So we have once again the use of the term sodomy, and this is going to look at some historical examples. And we'll notice here they're talking about Christianity. And when you're doing any of these readings, if the reading is addressing historical information, try not to get too caught up in trying to understand Rome and Christianity. Just try to focus on what the issue is, in the reading and how it's impacting gay rights. So here we see a lot of religious language, sexual acts forbidden by God, sodomy acts between males, the New Testament. So at the end, we want to have an understanding of the role of religion and the key role that religion plays in establishing the treatment of homosexuals within societies. In this reading, Ho Hum, another work of the devil. So we have once again some of those laws. And in this one, they're going to be looking at some historic cases. Here we have the 1600s. So we want to we don't want to focus too much on trying to know everything about, what's going on in the 1600s. But when you're done with this reading, we should have some understanding of what the common, issues taking place. So if we're looking here at this case or this situation here with the Earl of Castlehaven, what are some of the similarities? What would it be like to be a gay man or gay woman in the history that this reading is about? What would that experience be like? It's what I want you to focus on. All right, this next one. Inverts, perverts, Marians, male prostitutes, and the regulation of homosexuality. So here we're talking now about homosexuality and class. And what you want to do with this one is look at the role of economics. If we take two males and these individuals are engaging in any sort of relationship, what would happen if we have a male prostitute? Is it possible for that male prostitute to engage in a sexual act with this male. But can the prostitute argue that they're not a homosexual, that it's really a result of their economic status? So this reading here is looking at economics and homosexuality. That's this particular reading. What else? This reading is looking at variants and lesbians. When you see the term variant, that is a term that identifies lesbian women in the 1900s. So you pretty much just want to have an understanding of what it was like to be a lesbian in the 1920s, the year that the reading is writing about. So that's it.